Here now to introduce our main program is past president Dorothy Bullitt.
Thank you, Jimmy. Longtime Seattle Rotarian Trish Bostrom was a pioneer in women's sports. In 1971, long before she became a lawyer, Trish sued to play tennis on the UW men's team. She also challenged the university to develop equitable athletic programs for women. After what must have been an impressive pretrial hearing, the UW agreed to both of her demands. She is the only Husky athlete, male or female, to win the Pacific 8 Singles Championship and the National Mixed College Doubles title. She competed at the U.S. Open, the French Open, and the Australian Open. She was ranked 5th in the world in doubles, and she defeated Billie Jean King on Wimbledon's center court. Trish has been inducted into the UW Husky Hall of Fame, Washington Sports Hall of Fame, the Pacific Northwest Tennis Hall of Fame, and the Pac-12 Hall of Fame. In the years since Trish forever changed college sports, she went to law school, passed the bar, and for several decades has practiced estate planning, real estate, and corporate law here in Seattle. Along the way, she became a civic leader, serving on several nonprofit boards, including Seattle Opera, the Rotary Service Foundation, the UW Alumni Board, and the Governor's Alliance Against Drugs. U.S.A. Today identified our fellow Seattle Rotarian as one of Washington State's top 10 women of the century. It is my honor to present Trish Bostrom.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dorothy, for that very kind introduction, and thank you, Faith. And also, I want to say to the Walker family, I knew Judy and Bruce, and they were just outstanding people, outstanding. In order to understand my passion for Title IX, you need to understand a little of my history. I was born here in Seattle, in West Seattle. When I went to grade school, there were no athletic programs for girls. There was a very kind teacher, Mr. Ben-Hur, who started a basketball program, and we played against the Catholic girls' schools. When I went to junior high, again, there were no athletic programs for girls. By this time, I had started playing tennis outside of the school program on the Pacific Northwest Circuit. By the time I reached high school, my skill level was quite high in tennis because I had spent so many hours on the tennis court. When I was in high school, I did all the sit-ups, I did all the exercises, I did all the drills, but they would not let me play for the team because I was a girl. I wrote a letter to Frank Ensley, who was Jay Ensley's father. He was the head of the Seattle Sports for the Seattle Public Schools. And in that letter, I set out my ranking, my wins and loss record, the fact that I did all the exercises and did all the drills, but I wasn't allowed to play. And I told him it's called the Chief Sealth tennis team. It's not called the Chief Sealth boys tennis team. I received a nice little letter back saying, sorry, Trish, the team is only for boys. When I went to the University of Washington, there was a varsity tennis team. We played in the Pac-8 just like the men did. However, there were great discrepancies between the programs. The men had Bill Quillian as their coach. He was a great coach. He had played internationally. He was in the top 10 in the United States. I used to hit with him late at night at the tennis club. He was highly talented. We had a graduate student that knew very little, if anything, about tennis. The men had uniforms. We had no uniforms. The men received their equipment. We had to buy our equipment. The men would fly to their matches. We would drive in a car. The men would sleep in hotels. We would ask each other on the team, do you have a friend or relative at Stanford that we could call up and see if we could bring our sleeping bags and sleep on the floor? The women slept on their floor before their competitions. The men were sent to the National Collegiate Championships if they qualified. I qualified as a freshman for the National Women's Collegiate Championships, but the university would not send me. I went out into the corporate community to raise funds in order to cover my air ticket to get there. And I can remember looking up at the draw and it said Patricia Bostrom, University of Washington. And I thought, oh, it should say Patricia Bostrom, Osborne and Newland, because they were the ones that helped me get to the National Collegiate Championships. Basically, the women's programs were underfunded or not funded. Great disparities existed between the programs. This continued to gnaw at me deep down inside. And I would constantly complain to my parents. It's not fair, it's discriminatory, it's not right, it's unjust. And my father was a great handball player. And fortunately, he was playing handball one day with Don Cohen, an attorney. And he happened to mention the problems I was having out at the University of Washington. And Don said to my dad, oh, tell Trish to come up and see me. I went up to see Don the next day. And I explained to Don the great discrepancies between the programs. And I explained that I wanted equitable athletic opportunities for women. And I wanted the right to try out until they were equitable. I'll never forget it. I can remember it as if it were yesterday. He leaned across his desk and he said, Trish, I'll take your case for free. For free? Here was somebody willing to help me to challenge the University of Washington. I was a student. I didn't have any money. Here was somebody willing to help me. And Don is on the Zoom call today. And I just want to say, Don, thank you again. Thank you. Without what you did, none of this would happen. Thank you, Don. So Don then started writing letters to the university asking for a pretrial hearing. Most good lawyers, they don't run down to the courthouse. What they do is they set up a pretrial hearing in order to try and determine if a settlement can be reached before filing the complaint. But the university would not respond to us. And then Don ran into Gary Gayton, another attorney in Seattle. Gary was an African-American attorney who had filed a complaint against the University of Washington, alleging racial discrimination in the football program. Gary said, oh, Don, add me as your co-counsel. It worked. We heard from the university and they agreed to a pretrial hearing. But before the pretrial hearing, I was brought into Kit Green's office. Kit Green was the athletic director for women at the University of Washington. And she sat me down and said, Trish, do not do what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. Do not rock the boat. I can remember leaving her office and thinking, she doesn't understand. She doesn't get it. I'm going to get a better job for her. Regardless, we had the pretrial hearing. I proceeded to the pretrial hearing, and I could remember it as if it were yesterday. It was in a long, narrow room, and there were many, about 14 men around the long, narrow table. There was Harry Cross, who was the dean of the law school at the University of Washington, Al Albrechtsen, the athletic director, and many vice presidents of the university. Don was excellent at explaining the discrepancies between the programs and explaining that we wanted equitable athletic opportunities for women at the University of Washington, and we wanted the right for me to try out until they were equitable. At the end of the meeting, one of the vice presidents said, well, really, what can you do to us? What can you really do to us if you don't give it, if we don't give you what you want, if we don't work for equitable athletic opportunities for women, and we don't let her, and if we don't let her try out, you know, what can you really do to us? It was then that Don said, we are going to bring an injunction against the University of Washington, enjoining it from competing in any NCAA athletic competitions, including football. The room was quiet, totally quiet. A week later, we heard from the University of Washington. They said, Trish, you were right. We were wrong. The women's programs are horribly underfunded. We will work towards equitable athletic opportunities for women, and you will have the right to try out. June 23, 1972, Title IX passed. Title IX states, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or suffer discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Title IX basically said if a school or university is receiving federal funds, you cannot discriminate against girls and women. Now, under Title IX, there are 3 tests to determine whether a school or university is adhering to Title IX. The first is the ratio test. The school has to show that the ratio between its men students and female students is similar or equal to the ratio between its men athletes and female athletes. If it is close or similar or equal to, then that school is in adherence with Title IX. The second test is the historical improvement test. All a school or university needs to do is show that it is historically improving its girls' or women's programs. If they can show that, they are in adherence of Title IX. The third test was the fully needs met test. There, a university or school had to show that its needs for its women and girls have been fully met. Then they were in compliance with Title IX. After the passing of Title IX, Congress passed another bill, which were the rules and regulations of Title IX. These were the heart and soul of Title IX. These rules and regulations said if the men had a qualified coach, the women had to have a qualified coach. If the men had scholarships, the women had to have scholarships. If the men received equipment, the women had to receive equipment. If the men flew to their matches, the women had to fly to the matches. If the men slept in hotels, the women had to sleep in hotels. No longer would women athletes have to sleep on the floor before their competition. Now, ever since the passing of Title IX, since the passing in 1972, there have been constant and consistent attacks on Title IX. Right after Title IX was passed, Senator Strom Thurmond brought a bill in Congress to totally eliminate Title IX. Fortunately, Congress did not listen to him and did not pass his bill, but he did not give up. 6 months later, he brought another bill in Congress, totally eliminating the rules and regulations of Title IX. That would have eviscerated Title IX. That was the heart and soul of Title IX. Congress, again in its wisdom, did not pass his bill. Then in the mid-70s, the NCAA came out totally against Title IX. They lobbied Congress and they said, you must end Title IX. If you don't end Title IX, we will have no athletic programs for our boys and our young men. It must be destroyed. Congress again did not listen. One of the most egregious attacks on Title IX occurred quite recently under the George W. Bush administration. Under this administration, they promulgated the, quote, email regulations. These regulations said that all a school or university needed to do was send out emails to its students, female students, asking them if they were interested in athletics. If they received little or no response, then the school could say that the needs for its women had been fully met, and therefore they could eliminate women's athletic programs. Oh, not fair. Not fair, said the mothers and the fathers who had daughters who had greatly benefited from Title IX. It had been over 30 years since the passing of Title IX, and these mothers and fathers stood up. They were loud, they were vociferous, they lobbied the NCAA. They said, do not follow these new regulations. And amazingly, the NCAA came out and said, even though these email regulations are on the books, we are not going to follow them. We are going to adhere to Title IX. Under the Obama administration, the email regulations were terminated. More attacks and erosion of Title IX, attempts to erode Title IX occurred during the Trump administration. Constant and consistent attacks to eliminate Title IX have occurred over these 50 years, and I can guarantee you 100% that there will be constant attacks on Title IX in the future. So what has been the great societal impact of Title IX? Let's take a look at the UW women's tennis team. Today, they have a great coach. She played on the international circuit. She's highly qualified. They have uniforms. They have scholarships. They are supplied all of their equipment. They fly to their matches. They sleep in hotels. If they qualify for the national collegiates, they're sent by the university. I can honestly say at the collegiate level that due to Title IX, the programs for women are 100% or 99.9% equal to the men's programs. Where there's still work to be done falls in the high school, junior high, and grade school level. The research is showing that where there's a single-use facility, only one gym, that is supposed to be shared equally by the boys' team and the girls' team, that the girls do not get equal use of that facility in the junior high and grade schools. The research also shows that many girls' teams don't have uniforms, but it is 100% better than it was in 1972. So great improvement has been made. Many people think that Title IX has only to do with athletics. I recited for you the exact wording of Title IX, and nowhere in that wording is the word athletics mentioned, but it is primarily known for what it did for athletics for women. But Title IX burst open the doors for women to the medical schools, the law schools, the computer science classes, the calculus classes, the physics labs, the chemistry labs, all of those which were closed to women or only were allowed, a quota of women were allowed in. Those doors were burst open. So what do we have today? If you look at the applications for law school, today 54% are women. If you look at the applications for medical school, 51% today are women. Let's take a look at our Superior Court bench, 60 judges, 40 are women. Let's take a look at our Supreme Court bench of the state of Washington, 9 judges, 7 of them are women. Huge changes have occurred since Title IX. Leaders, women leaders are emerging in all areas of our society, not only in law, but in all areas of our society. And I'm a firm believer that we need all of the brilliant minds from the men, from the women, from African Americans, all of our brilliant minds in order to solve our country's problems. So what can you do? What can you do? First thing is, don't let Title IX die. I've explained to you some of the attacks on Title IX, and I can guarantee you there will be future attacks for Title IX. Don't let it die. When you see it being eroded, speak out, raise your voice, call your congressman, call your congressman. Do not let it die. Second, have courage. Deep down, I felt it was wrong. It was discriminatory. It wasn't correct. If you get that feeling, regardless of the issue, raise your voice. Your voice is far more powerful than you realize. Have courage. Third is be a mentor. Madeleine Albright, our great ex-Secretary of State, once said, there is a special place in hell for any woman who doesn't mentor a young woman. Ooh, I looked in the mirror and I said, Trish, you need to up your mentoring. Actually, I urge people to mentor young women, mentor young boys too, but the young women, the young girls don't have any mentors, and they're just so eager to have mentors. Mentor young people, and our mentoring program here in Rotary is just tremendous. So mentor young women. There are 2 main issues in our society that I think have morphed from Title IX. One of these is equal pay. Equal pay for women. Here we are in the 21st century, still talking about equal pay. I can't believe it. But it has gotten better. It used to be 70 cents on the dollar. Now it's about 85% on the dollar. And Governor Inslee has made equal pay across the board in governmental departments in the state. When I look at what the women's soccer team did, amazing. They filed their lawsuit in 2016, and they were persistent and kept with it. And 6 years later, 2022, there's now equal pay for women athletes in international soccer. Incredible. The other issue that morphed from Title IX is the Equal Rights Amendment. Again, here we are in the 21st century, and the Equal Rights Amendment still hasn't passed. No person in the United States shall be discriminated against based on sex. The Civil Rights Amendment passed. No person in the United States shall be discriminated based on color in 1964. And here we are, and there isn't a movement. I don't see a movement to pass the ERA amendment. Perhaps it needs to come from Seattle Downtown Rotary into a national movement. But that is another idea, great societal idea that has morphed from Title IX. There have been 2 great pieces of legislation that have dramatically affected women and girls. And those are, one, the right to vote, and the second one I would contend is Title IX. Here we are celebrating 50 years of Title IX, and I look forward to the great continual societal impact it will have in the next years to come. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go with right now, you would be getting a standing ovation, Trish.
Thank you.
I'm kind of speechless, which I think everybody knows is basically impossible. That was incredible. And I've heard your story because I interviewed you once. That was incredible. You make us all stand prouder as your fellow members, and good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take
All
it.
right. We're going to move on. We have run out of time for Q&A, and I'm really bummed. Trish, if you have a second, you should read your fan mail in the chat, because that's basically all it is now, is just filling up with your fan mail. So thank you very much.